Week first. So last week was the circulatory system. I'll go over the cat cadaver stuff first, and then I'll go over the sheep heart. So for the cat cadaver, I'll start off with the veins. So the first one we have is inferior vena cava. So that's going to be the big vein, which all the smaller veins are going to pool into from the lower body, bringing all that blood from the lower body back to the heart. Above, we have the superior vena cava. So it's going to be that straight projection from the top of the heart, big straight vein here. It's going to be cut in half. It's going to continue up here, the straight part, where that branches off into the left and the right. We're going to have the left brachiocephalic vein and the right brachiocephalic vein. So you can see relatively clearly on this cat that that's going to branch off further. So it's either going to continue straight off in that same direction, or it's going to go straight up to the neck and the head. So up there, or continue over. If it continues over in that same direction, it's going to be the subclavian vein. So you have the right subclavian vein continuing this way, and the left subclavian vein continuing this way. The one that's going straight up, you can't really see it on the outside of this cat's neck, but you can kind of see the blue dye here. On the other cats, it's a little more clear. It's going to be a straight up and down blue vein right on the neck muscles, so that's where I'll pin it for the test. But you can see that they split and go straight up here, so that would be the external jugular vein. So that would be the left side, and the right side is going to be this one continuing up here. So if I do pin it though, left external jugular vein and right external jugular vein are going to be up in the neck musculature area. So that covers the veins. Do the arteries. So coming off the heart here, not going to be on the lab test, but the first major branch off is the aorta. So it's going to be that loop right here. Coming off of that are going to be two branches that we need to know. The one that's only by itself is going to be your left subclavian vein, or artery, sorry. Left subclavian artery here branching off on its own. The bigger branch here is going to be the brachiocephalic artery, and that's going to branch off into three separate ones. So it's going to be both your common carotid. The left common carotid artery goes up to the neck and the head. It's going to branch off further here to the right common carotid artery, and then its third last branch is going to be the right subclavian artery. So once again, we have two main branches coming off the aorta. We need to know the one here that's off on its own, left subclavian artery. Bigger branch is going to start off as the brachiocephalic artery and then branch off into three different ones. Both your common carotids, your left common carotid artery, right common carotid artery, and your right subclavian artery. All right, so that's the cat cadaver from last week. Go over the sheep heart. So again, to differentiate right and left side, easiest way, right side's going to have a diagonal cut through it, as well as the cut's going to continue through the pulmonary artery here. The left side, left atrium and ventricle, is going to be more of a vertical up and down cut. All right. And if I'm going to pin the atrium and the ventricles on the test, they're going to be on the outside of the heart, just because if it's on the inside, I could have been getting into the AV valve or the piliary muscle and stuff like that. So atrium for the left side would be on either side, but at the top. Ventricle is going to be down below. So if you open it up, see the atrium's up here at the top above the AV valve, ventricle is below. For the right side, can't really see the atrium when we open it up, so it's going to be around this area. So if I pinned it on the heart, it's probably going to be kind of up here, and the ventricle is going to be down below. All right? So I'll go through the pathway that the blood goes through and the structures we need to know. So the first one, superior vena cava. It's going to be right here. If you follow the probe through, you can see that it's going from the superior vena cava through the right atrium in this area. You can see the right AV valve pretty clearly on this one. It's tricuspid on this side. It's going to be that whole white mesh area. Don't need to know that for the test, but good to know obviously. And you can see blood will be going through superior vena cava, through the right atrium, through that AV valve, and then into the right ventricle in this area here. So anything below that AV valve is going to be right ventricle. Right, so you have superior vena cava, and then below it, you're going to have the inferior vena cava. So again, if you follow the probe through, see that it's going through all the way. So again, we have the superior vena cava up here, and the inferior vena cava just below that. All right, so it's going to go right atrium, right AV valve. You can see the chordate tendinate pretty clearly on this one. I'd most likely pin it on the left side though, just because it's easier to get at. And there's more of them. You can see the AV valve. The piliary muscle is going to be all along the inside wall of the ventricle. So blood's going to go out the next passageway through the pulmonary artery. So once again, it's that cut vein, so it's the only one that has a cut going through it. We also need to know the structure, the pulmonary semilunar valve. Try and get it out a bit. So you guys can see that sheet right there. It's going to come out. That's going to be part of the pulmonary semilunar valve. So it's going to be that sheet. So once again, the valve's always purpose is to block the backflow of blood the wrong way. So that's going to prevent any blood from going the wrong way back down the pulmonary artery into the right ventricle, because that's not the way it wants to go. Right, so it's going to go from the pulmonary artery out to the lungs, get oxygen, come back. It's going to come into the left side through the pulmonary veins, which you got right here and here. Don't need to know that for the test, but just so you can differentiate and know what they are. So it's going to go into the left side this time. Once again, anything above this atrioventricular valve here. So anything above that valve area is going to be left atrium. Once again, I put it on the outside of the heart for the test. That's the AV valve once again. It's bicuspid on this side. So it's tricuspid on the right side, bicuspid on the left side. Below that valve is going to be the whole area here. It's going to be left ventricle. You can see papillary muscle is going to be the smooth pinky gray muscle on the inside wall of the ventricle. So it's a bit different looking from the myocardium, which is thicker on the outside wall. Don't need to know the myocardium for the test, but just so you can tell the difference. And then once again, we have the chordae tendineae, these white strings that are going from the papillary muscle to the AV valve, which is where they all connect into the sheet-like area. So when the papillary muscle contracts, that's going to close that AV valve, pull on the chordae tendineae. And then last phase, when the left ventricle contracts, it's going to push the blood up through the aorta, which is the big artery in the very middle of the top of the heart. So again, if we follow the probe, you can see it goes through left ventricle to the aorta. So when the ventricle contracts, it's going to squeeze the blood out through there. On this heart, you can also see brachiocephalic artery, which is breaking off of the aorta. So it's that tinier one breaking off of it. Again, don't need to know that for the lab test, but just good so you can differentiate between everything. Easiest way, I think, to separate the arteries from the veins from looking at them this way, aorta is always going to be that one in the top, in the very middle. Pulmonary artery is pretty much right beside it. Again, that's the one with the cut through it, so that's pretty easy to identify. Brachiocephalic artery would be the tiny one breaking off the aorta, which you don't need to know. And then in comparison to that location, looking where the left vertical downcut is for the left atrium ventricle, the superior and inferior vena cava are actually pretty close to that. They're just above it to the right, and they're going to be a bit lower than the aorta. So they're kind of in the area of the left ventricle, but as you can see, the blood would be crossing through here in the right atrium and going again into the right ventricle. Right, so that's the sheet part from last week. Go over the new material. So I'll start off with the brain. Got the sheep brain for the nervous system, and then we'll go over the digestive system in the cat. So I'll pin some of the structures on the lateral view of the brain, so the outside, so you can see the other half of the brain will be here. So this is going to be the lateral view. This will be the medial view of the inside. So I'm going to pin some of the structures. I'll tell you which ones on the inside only and some on the outside only. So the outside ones I'm going to go over first. So these ones are going to be the lobes or the areas. So they all have different processes that they work on. And so the first area is going to be the frontal area. So it's going to be this whole area here at the front of the brain. So that's going to have our voluntary movement center, primary motor cortex, as well as prefrontal cortex, which is executive functioning, higher thought processes, planning, all that kind of stuff, personality. But next to that, right above where your temple would be, is the temporal area or lobe. So that's going to have the primary auditory cortex, primary olfactory cortex, so your senses of smell and hearing are mainly going to be processed there. So again, frontal area, temporal area. The back of the brain here, you have the occipital area, or the occipital lobe. So that's going to have the primary visual cortex in there, so primary area where visual information is going to get processed. And then up here above the temporal area, so kind of in the middle but at the top of the brain, is going to be the parietal area. So that's going to have our primary sensory cortex, somatosensory cortex, as well as some other areas that process auditory information. So again, frontal area, all in this area here, parietal area, occipital area, and then temporal area. All right, and then we have one more structure that I would pin from this lateral side. That's going to be the cerebellum. So it's this kind of mini brain at the back. So that's going to help out with our balance and motor coordination. So if I flip it over, you can see the cerebellum again. Again, for the test, if I wanted you to identify cerebellum, it's going to be on this side, so I'd pin it on here. If I pinned it on the inside, or the medial view of the cerebellum, I'm going to put it in this white area, which is called the arbor vitae. It's just going to be all the myelinated axons of that cerebellum. So you can kind of see it looks like a tree, translates to tree of life, and it's going to be called the arbor vitae. All right, so we'll go over the other structures that we're going to cover on the medial side. So I'm going to outline the first one. It's the corpus callosum. So you can kind of see this, looks like a squish circle kind of. It's going to have that line through the middle. So it's going to be this whole area, this line that continues around. That's going to be the corpus callosum. And that's going to connect the left and right hemispheres so they can communicate with each other. So that's going to be the first structure. I think the best way to memorize these ones is just kind of in an order like the muscles. So going from the corpus callosum all the way down to the spinal cord. I'll go through all those structures we need to know. So we have corpus callosum, this kind of circular area, which me and the other TAs have kind of grooved into now. So there's actually a circle there. That's the thalamus. So that's going to be the sensory relay center for the brain. So everything that comes up the spinal cord, sensory information, first going to be processed in the thalamus, and then it kind of decides, all right, your motor information, you're going to go to the primary motor cortex, et cetera, et cetera. So once again, corpus callosum, thalamus. This whole area here next to the thalamus is going to be your midbrain. So that's going to have some cranial nerves. It's also going to some cranial nerves, also going to have some auditory and visual reflexes controlled in there. You can see this bump that comes off right underneath where that midbrain area is. So that's a little protrusion or bump right there. That's going to be your pons. So that area right there above that bump. So that's going to communicate with the cerebellum. As well, it has a bunch of other cranial nerves, and it's going to regulate your breathing rate and depth. So the pons, so going in order again, corpus callosum, thalamus, midbrain, pons, and then you guys can see kind of see that second bump right there. So it's a tinier bump that's right after the pons. That's going to be your medulla. So that's going to have the rest of your cranial nerves, as well as regulating most of your vitals, vital signs, I guess. So cardiac center, respiratory center, blood pressure as well. So pretty important, obviously. And then this last area here, so right after the medulla, kind of where the cerebellum ends, that's going to continue on, and that's going to be your spinal cord. Right? So spinal cord brings motor information down from the brain to our muscles, tells us what to do, as well as brings all our sensory information back from the body to the brain so we know what's going on. So again, the order would be corpus callosum here, thalamus, midbrain, pons, medulla, and then spinal cord. And then again, you have arbor vitae in the cerebellum here. So it's going to be that white area that looks like a tree branching out. Flip it over, I'll go over these structures one more time. Got cerebellum once again, the mini little brain at the back. Got the occipital area, parietal area here in the middle at the top of the brain. Below that, temporal area, and then the whole frontal area right here. Okay? If you have any questions after, let me know. And then we'll go into the digestive system, so the final stuff we need to know for the lab test. So I'll start off kind of going from top to bottom and kind of as well trying to follow the pathway that the food's going to go through. So the first stage is obviously the mouth, and then we go through the esophagus. Don't need to know that for the lab test, but you probably already know that anyway from taking the class. So this first one here we ought to know is the diaphragm. So it's the only muscle really in this lab. So that's going to be the muscle that helps you breathe. So when it contracts, it's going to lower down. So when you're doing diaphragmatic breathing, which is the proper breathing you should always be doing, but we always, as we tend to get older, we don't do it as much. So when you breathe in, your stomach's going to actually protrude because your diaphragm's contracting down. It's going to kind of squish your organs out. So when that happens, it's going to increase the volume, which decreases the pressure, which is going to allow air to come into our lungs. And then when it relaxes, it's going to go back up, decrease the volume of that thoracic cavity, increase the pressure, so then it's going to force the air out of our lungs, and that's when we exhale. So when the diaphragm contracts, inhale, relaxes, we exhale. All right, so just below the diaphragm here, this whole area here, it's dark brown, it's going to be your liver. So it's going to have a bigger left lobe. Cat has a couple extra lobes, and humans it's just right and left lobe. Left lobe is always bigger. If we pull back the liver here, you can see this green little shriveled up ball underneath. Everybody can see that. That's going to be your gallbladder. So that's going to store the bile that the liver produces while it's done. So it's going to store it and then release it into the small intestine when it needs to be utilized, so that bile is going to emulsify or digest fat. So again, diaphragm, liver, underneath the liver, if we pull it back, you can see the gallbladder. Alright, if we pull the liver back as well, you can see the stomach here. So this big pink area, it's kind of in a J shape. It's going to be your stomach. So pull it back, stomach is all here. Alright, this lovely looking stuff coming off of the stomach is greater momentum. So that's going to basically lock down the stomach and everything. It's going to connect to the wall of the abdominal cavity and kind of keep everything where it's supposed to be, so everything's not flying around when we're moving. So the next stage, so we lift that greater momentum up, we can see all the intestines. So we can see pretty much right here is where the stomach is going to enter into the small intestine. So up here where the esophagus meets the stomach is going to be your cardiac sphincter, and there's going to be a pyloric sphincter here that regulates the flow of food from the stomach to the small intestine. That'll be right here where it turns into the small intestine. So the first area of the small intestine is going to be this kind of a, looks like a C shape if you go down and follow it the whole way. So that's going to be your duodenum or duodenum, however you want to say it. So that's going to be the first area of the small intestine, and within that C shape, this area in here, if you guys can see that, or if you flip it from this side, this organ right in here on the C shape of the duodenum, that's going to be your pancreas, right? So that produces insulin, glucagon. It's going to regulate your blood sugar levels. So once again, stomach going into the small intestine, starting here, and in that first section, the duodenum, you're going to have your pancreas. All right, see that? You can see it from the angle if we pull it up from behind too. So that's going to be your pancreas. This is all this skinnier tubing here that's all kind of all bundled up is all going to be your small intestine. So when we pull that apart, kind of, you can see this clear, translucent material that's going to be your mesentery for your small intestine. So once again, that's pretty much the same thing as the omentum. It's just going to keep everything together, keep everything in contact with everything. And then you can see right here where it goes from skinny tube to a larger, thicker tube. That's going to be where it transfers from the small intestine to the large intestine. So self-explanatory by the name. Small intestine is going to be smaller, large intestine is larger, just in diameter. Small intestine is a lot longer lengthwise than large intestine. So large intestine here, the mesentery for the large intestine. You can kind of see it here on the medial side of it. As well as when we pull it back, it's mainly going to be on the back. So you can see here, that's going to be the mesentery. It's going to connect mainly to the back of the abdominal wall. And once again, just keep all that in line where it should be. Next one we have is the spleen. So looking at the cat, for us it's going to be on the right side. In the cat it's going to be on its left side. This is going to be the biggest lymph organ in the body. It's going to store white blood cells, red blood cells, release antigens when needed, etc. And the last couple structures are going to be your kidneys. So we have our left kidney here. So if we pull everything back, we can see the kidneys. That's why kidney shots, for punching, they're kind of lower back. If we pull it on to the other side as well, we have our right kidney. So it's a little ball basically. It's going to have a ureter that's going to transfer the urine to the urinary bladder down here. So you need to know these three structures: kidney, ureter, which is going to bring the urine to the urinary bladder. So the kidneys are going to function to filter your blood, remove all the waste and stuff, and then take back all the stuff we need. So all the stuff we don't need is going to be waste, goes from the ureter the urinary bladder and then expels that when need be. So that covers everything. I'll just go over it once more, pointing every structure out.